Hey all, we are going to be doing the correcting skin color lesson. Now this is really complicated, and so you can either take away a large amount from this lesson or a small amount and just go the easy way. It's up to you. But I'm going to try to cover a wide range of concepts here. The Photoshop Elements actually has a tool in it that Photoshop does not, that makes skin color correction really simple. But I'm going to hold off on showing that until the end, because what you learned in the beginning of the lesson will make that tool make more sense. Also, color correction is much easier to do in the full version of Photoshop, and I'm going to touch on that just a little bit in Photoshop Elements with some graphics, just for those people who do have the full version of Photoshop. But for the people who don't have the full version of Photoshop, I'm going to have to make this lesson really complicated so that you understand it, and you'll see why I'm going at this the way I am. I try to teach everything in Photoshop Elements so that everybody can do the lesson, and so I have to break it down in this way. Okay, here's a photo, and this is actually the photo of me and my husband, and it's corrected. I couldn't really sit here and do this to anybody else's face and have them in a video. That just didn't seem right, and so I chose this one of hubby and I. But I'm going to take off the correction, and you're going to see how it is not good. It looks really actually too red. We do have on our wine shirts. You've probably seen them on my blog and in some of my layouts. If not, you're going to be seeing them soon. And of course they're wine colored, and that actually was making a red reflection up on our faces in this photo. And so, and my hair's a mess, ignore that too. And so we're going to be using this photo to correct it, and I've gotten this little cheat sheet up here. Let's start here, and this is actually really handy to have. I'll give you this to download in your thread so you can keep it handy, because until you get this memorized, this would be really helpful. Okay, when you're using the sliders in Photoshop, and you're going to see some of them, and Photoshop Elements, you're going to see what we call channels, and the channels are red, green, and blue, RGB color mode. And when you add red, you're taking away cyan. When you add green, you're taking away magenta. When you add blue, you're taking away from yellow. If you add yellow, you're taking away from blue. So it's a little tug and pull. When you add one, you're taking away the other. This is a very important concept in this lesson, especially if you're just a Photoshop Elements user. So to make your skin color, and we're gonna go over all this, and it's gonna hopefully make sense. To make your skin color a good color, you want the yellow and the magenta to be close in number, but you want the yellow to be a little bit higher. Well, that makes sense, because right now if I have too much magenta in this photo, in my skin color, the magenta is kind of a pinkish purple, and so you don't want so much pinkish purple. And to correct it, you're going to, add yellow. So you want your yellow to be just a little bit higher naturally in skin color. The next line here, it says RGB think opposite, but CMYK best used. I'm going to go into great detail explain that here in just a bit. But your second rule is that the cyan, you want to be 3 to 5 times more or less, depending on which mode you're working on. We're going to explain it, hopefully, This is a difficult concept. You want your cyan to be 3 or 5 times more or less than the magenta yellow numbers. So, and remember, the magenta and the yellow are going to be close. And so these are our general rules. But if you're working in RGB mode, you've got to think opposite. Okay, here goes my attempt to explain this. This is a shot. Well, before we do that, I got to decide how to do that. Let's go to Window and then Info. And we've not used this in any of the other tutorials here at Hummy's World, and basically because it is more for the color correction. And so then if you hover over it, and right now I'm on my Move tool, it works on the Move tool, and I think it works on any tool. Text tool works no matter what tool you're on. I'm going to hover over part of my face, and you can see there I'm on my chin with my cursor, and there we have numbers, and these numbers are in RGB for the RGB mode. You're going to recall that when you're in here you have RGB. Those and 255 is the top number. So currently for cyan it has 255 of green and 255 of blue, and no red in it to get cyan. But so you're going to look here, and there are the values. So if you, wherever I'm hovering over, if I were to make that the RGB there, those settings, then in my color picker, then that would be the color that it would come up with. Does that make sense? What we want to do though is to go under our eyedropper tool, and this is the sample size drop down menu. And now this is something I've not ever covered, I don't think, in any other tutorials. Point sample is going to be the pixel directly under, and then you have 3x5 and 5x5 average. That means it's going to take a sample of 5x5 pixels, 5 rows down, 5 rows across, and it's going to average that and choose that as its color. And in the full version of Photoshop you're going to find even more choices, like 11 by 11 and even higher. So those settings are even better to choose for the larger the image that you have. But we're going to do 5 by 5 average. That means it's going to take an average of the pixels right under where my eyedropper is. And so right now you're going to see my RGB is 99, 45, and 34. There is no way, if you double click on this little eyedropper tool here, you can change it to web color or hue, saturation, brightness color, or grayscale. There is no CMYK. This is where the complication comes in with Photoshop Elements and what makes Photoshop so much easier. So I'm going to turn off of this for right now, and we're going to look at this graphic. Let me zoom in. This is a sampling also. I can't remember if I was on my nose or my chin. You want to sample off of the nose or the chin area and not so much the cheeks. Now I don't wear makeup, but a lot of women do, and so the cheeks often will have makeup on it, or as you can see on the side of my face here, I have highlights here. A lot of times your cheeks have highlights on them, and so it's not a good place for you to be sampling color. If you don't have bangs, your forehead might be a good place to sample color also. So here is what that info palette looks like in the full version of Photoshop. And as you can see, I have my RGB over here, but I also have my CMYK. So there lies the problem with Photoshop Elements, is you can't not see the CMYK colors in order to use this handy chart. Oh, you'd think life would be easier. No, it's not. So, to get, just for the Photoshop Elements users, or the Photoshop users, here, just a little tip. It took me a little while to figure this out. You see I have two columns here. I have one in percentages and one in numbers. When you first open it up, I only saw percentages. Now, if you get a levels or another adjustment layer and click on it and make it active, and then shift and click anywhere out here, it's going to toggle that back on and off. If you're just on your image, it's not going to toggle it. It's going to try to put a point on it. So if you're in an adjustment layer, if you want to see these numbers here like that real easily, you can shift and click out there. That's for the full version of the Photoshop users, not Photoshop Elements. And so we have, let's look at our numbers. Let's look at it in the CMYK before we try to understand the RGB. It took me a half hour to get my husband to understand this, so it's a lot of math. So hopefully I will do my job okay. And take away from this as much or as little as you're able to understand. Okay, so you want your yellow and magenta to be close in number. Well, here's my yellow is 90 and my magenta is 83. They're pretty close in numbers. And you want the yellow to be higher. Well, 90 is higher than 83. I'm doing pretty good. Well, remember, this is my corrected image, though. And we want our cyan to be 3 to 5 times more or less. It depends. It's actually less if you're in CMYK. It's more if you're in RGB. Because remember, we're thinking in opposites if we're converting to RGB, which we'll look at in a minute. So you want your cyan to be 3 to 5 times less. So I have my handy calculator here in my Windows calculator. And I could almost do this in my head because 28, I just rounded up to 30. But let's do 28 times 3 is 84. So the 84 is right between this 83 and 90. I'm doing pretty good. Or I could do the 28 times 5, and it's a little high. So if I wanted to change this number, you see, there is no right or wrong because the all skin color is different. Some skin color is fair, and you may be going after that fair look in your image. A lot of people like that type of image. Of course, you have the darker color skin, and then you have the really light skin. You have the redder skins, like mine is naturally redder. And so, you know, there is no right or wrong. This is just kind of a guide, you know, for you to go by to try to get a target in somewhere in the target range. But, oh, shoot. So, I could change this number a little bit to fluctuate so that the numbers are a little bit different because I have a little leeway if I go toward the 28 times 5. But 28 times 3, I'm right in the target. There you go. Take it for what it is. Now, let's look over here at the RGB. And this is really when it starts getting complicated. Let's look at another sample because this is what I had to do to get my husband to understand. He was my test guinea pig. Here is another one. Oh, not that one. This one and my text. Okay. See here, to get the exact number, shift click Well, an adjustment layer, that's my note to remind me to tell the Photoshop users that. So I'm going to just kind of go off. We already talked about that. Okay, so let's look here. Whoops. Let's look here. We have this information in the full version, but we only have this information, so let's hide it. We can't see that. So how are we going to know that by this RGB, we can't see that in Photoshop Elements, so how are we going to know what that the yellow needs to be higher? How are we going to know that the yellow is higher when we don't have a yellow figure? I can give you a moment to think on that. My husband just kind of looked at me. Shh, don't tell him he's in the video. Oh wait, he is in the video. There's his lovely eyes peeking at us. Anyway, so here's what I had to do to teach him. If you think about it, blue is opposite of yellow. So we know blue is here, and there's a yellow on the other side of the spectrum over here. Okay, we should be using 255 because remember RGB's maximum is 255. But just for calculations and to make things easy to understand, we're using 100. So if there is 100 of a color and you have 29 of it blue, how much of it is yellow? 100 minus 29 is 71, so there's 71 of yellow. If you have 41 of a color and that is green and the opposite of it is magenta, so 100 minus 41 is 59 for magenta. Okay, hubby got that right away. Hopefully you followed that too. 41 and 59, you got a color and part of it's green and part of it's magenta, so 41 and 59 make 100. And 29 and 71 make blue and yellow up to 100. Okay, so we want the yellow to be the higher number. It is. 71 is higher than 59. But as this says, you have to think in opposites if you're using RGB. So if this set here, blue, yellow, if the yellow is higher, then the blue has to be lower. So I don't know how to explain this other than for my husband, it just finally clicked with him. If I'm taking this off, so if you just have this and you need the yellow to be higher than the blue, and because we're looking up and down as well as sideways, so that's what's confusing. You just have to think in opposites. I mean, basically all you have to know is that the green has to be a higher number than the blue. Because if you're going up here and looking, the yellow is a higher number than the magenta. So over here, the green would be a lower number. Now I'm getting backwards. Trust me, I've analyzed all this. It's opposite. If the bottom number has to be on this side of the graph, if the bottom number has to be higher and the top number than the top number, then over here the top number has to be higher and the bottom number has to be lower. I don't know if I'm explaining this math. Basically, if you're in Photoshop Elements and you're going to be doing this, you just have to think everything in opposites. Also, if you're doing the math here for the opposites, you'll notice that when we were doing it here, the cyan had a lower number than the yellow and the magenta. Over here, the red has a higher number than the green and the blue. So if you're in Photoshop Elements, you are going to be doing the opposite. You're going to take the 29 of the blue channel times 3, and you're going to see it's 87. It's not quite up to the 95, but you could also take 29 times 5, and it's 145. So we're kind of still in that range. For me, I just rounded this up to 30, and I see 30 times 3 is 95, or is 90, and it's really close, so that works. You remember that this isn't a good example because the 41, let's go back to a better example. I got a better example. I think this is my corrected numbers. Actually, the 42 and the 62 are kind of far apart. They're not very close. But if you do 42 times 3, you get 126. If you do 42 times 5, you get 210. So we're actually somewhere in between all of that, which is okay. If you do the 62 of the green times 3, we're at 186, a little high. So anyway, that's kind of how you calculate your numbers. So let's put this into action. See the numbers, you're calculating them backwards too. Let's just put this stuff into action. So here's my corrected one, here's my original one, and basically what I'm going to do is create a new adjustment layer. Sometimes you just have to trust your eyes and not the numbers, and understand the principles. Now we can do this in Hue and Saturation or levels. We can play with both. And so here we are, and I have my levels, and I need my little info window here, so that when I hover over, let's say, this part of my nose here, I'm going to see that the green and the blue are kind of far apart. So I'm going to make them closer. And so, but yet, as I said, we're talking opposites, so I want the green number to be higher than the blue number. That's all you got to remember if you're in Photoshop Elements. So I'm going to go into the blue, and I'm going to move this middle slider, and oh, you can see it's becoming bluer. But when I come over here, oh, it might be a little too much. 49. Oh, I gotta remember to put my cursor on the same spot. Oh, look, there they are, 58, 58. But I needed a little bit more. There they are. It seems like I want to be in my eyedropper tool. 64 and 62. Now wait a minute. We wanted, now see, I can't even remember. We wanted the top number to be higher. We wanted the green to be higher. See, I've been thinking about this. If you just use the same program, you get used to it. So see, I'm coming in here. Oh, I gotta go back this way. So you just keep kind of going back and forth. Just a little bit more. Okay, 63, 71. So you just keep kind of going back and forth until you think you got it. I think we're better off about right there. So those are pretty close there. 63, so it's just a little bit higher. The green's just a little bit higher than the blue. And as you can see, where's my layers palette? Click this off and on. We're already a different color. Actually, kind of like the original a little bit better. So we're going to click on this now, because now our lower number is, whoops, I'm on my nose. I was working on my nose. 40. 40 times 3 is 120. So it's actually not too bad right there. But let's say it's still a little too red. I needed, if it's too red, then you got to add cyan. So I'm going to go into the red channel, and to the right, I'm aware, takes away the red. So now we're at 40 and 138. So you can kind of use your numbers, kind of use your eye. 41 and 41 times 3 is 123. See, the problem is I got to get the right spot. So see, I'm doing pretty good. So this would be my before and my after. Now, for me though, the exposure is off, and what I actually did to correct this was to actually do a whole nother adjustment layer for levels, and I adjusted it this way using these for all of the sliders for just the RGB. And anyway, and you played with it, and I played with it until I got it. And actually, this is what I ended up with before. You can see that I got a much better result the first time. So that's basically how you do that. Let's see, let's play with the hue and saturation. And let's go get that info box out. Now, if you want, you can put this info box right in here. So you don't have to keep opening it up. So here we are, but I'm going to go to my hue and saturation, and I want to go, see, we got a little bit more choices in here because you have all of them. You have your reds and your yellows and your greens, cyans, blues, magentas. Now they're all there. So I wanted, let's see, go back to my info, and I see I have 40 and 60, so I probably want to bring my yellows up a little bit. So I'm going to go in here, whoops, click yellow, and bump them up. I'm going to saturation, bump it up on saturation. You can actually, what's cool in here is change the hue and the lightness sliders also. But if I bump up the saturation for yellow, you can see now we're at 4160. Let's see what happens, because I didn't actually play with this earlier. I know I've played with it. It's needing a whole bunch of bump, isn't it? Still 4160. What layer are we on? Okay. Let's go in though. This will show you your reds, because that's the problem with mine. Look at that. Oh, but now you got to be careful, because look at that. I'm getting orange teeth. So my playing with the hue and saturation is not being as successful, because I definitely do not want, oh, see, I put that too high up when on the yellows. See, I could really see, you can take all the red out. And so there we have it. And then if This is before and after. You see it's really red before, not so red after. And then of course, if my levels were corrected to begin with, that would help. And so here's before and here's after. And here's just the color correction. See, this is the exposure, the levels for exposure adjustment. And then this is the color correcting one with the hue and saturation. So you can see it looks much better. I know a lot of people, especially me, who seem to have a lot of red in my skin, and then I have the red from the wine shirt. When my face is, when photos of me are posted and my face is just super red, blown out more red than it normally is, I absolutely hate that. Okay, so let's go ahead now and look at the fun tool in Photoshop Elements that you Photoshop people don't have, which you would love. I'm going to duplicate this photo and go to the Enhance drop down menu, Adjust Color, and adjust skin color for skin tone. And then according to the directions, all you do is click somewhere on their skin, and remember, use the forehead and the chin and the nose. Oh, look, it corrects it, but look how blue it is. Oh, hubby's forehead actually does too well. You can do the preview on and off. You can reset it and try again. I find sometimes the neck, because nobody puts makeup on the neck, sometimes the neck is helpful. But let's say I do my nose and I don't have my hubby's face to click on, and I'm seeing that it's a little too blue. Remember up here we said that there's these three things here: red to cyan, green to magenta, and blue to yellow. The sliders actually correspond with it. So I'm thinking that it's a little too blue. That's actually the red to cyan, or the ambient lighting. You see it's going red to blue here. So I can just up that just a tiny bit, and that takes away that, because we're going from one to the other. Actually, might even be the blue to the yellow. The red is the blush, adding, you see if I take away the blush, what's it doing? It's turning to blue. So it's adding the cyan. So it's going from one to the other. If you're going too much blush, you're adding too much red. So this actually correlates with this. And then this one, the skin color, is the yellow to blue. This one's the yellow to blue. This one's the cyan. And this one's more green to magenta. That's right. That's what I had figured out earlier. So blue to yellow. This is more blue to yellow. This one's more green to magenta. And this one is more red to cyan. I knew I had figured this out earlier. So even though they're calling it tan, blush, and temperature, I mean, that's kind of what they're doing. So you're going to remember, you always kind of want the tan to be a little bit more than your blush, or equal. Because remember, we wanted a little bit more yellow than the tan. And then you adjust this so it's not too blue like Smurfs, and you get it about right. Or you use the little dropper and let them figure it out and then adjust it. So anyway, reset it. It's a handy tool. Most of the time, except for in this photo, it almost gets it spot on. But then all I have to do is adjust the temperature a tidbit and it fixes it. And you click OK, and we can toggle before and after. There's before and after. See, too red and just perfect. It's a handy quick tool. And then you can go to your info and go over my nose, and you can see that's actually pretty good. because up there we have 33 and 66. So the green is a higher number than the blue, which is supposed to be, if we're thinking in RGB, and 33 times, let's clear, 33 times 5 is 165. It was 129, wasn't it? What was it? It was 127. It was 129 earlier. 33 times 3 is 99. 33 times 4 is is messed up. 33 times 4 is 132. So you can see that this is about the 33 times 4. You can see it's about in that range. So it's looking pretty good, except for it needs an exposure fix, which was what? This one? No, this one. There we go. That's even better. I had an exposure problem, which is our previous lesson, our older lesson. Hopefully you guys get this. It's really complicated. Just remember, if you're working in RGB mode, the green is a higher number than the blue, and then you times these two numbers by 3 to 5, and they should be about right. If you're in the cyan CMYK, by the way, K is more, it's a complicated thing. You get, if you search on the internet, you're going to get all sorts of different definitions of what that is. Basically, it's the darker color or the black. K for key is what I've read. But if you're just focusing on CYMK, it's the opposite of the other one when you're using your levels and your hue and saturation and your curves dialog box. I'm not going to go there. That's even more information. But if you're in Photoshop, use your curves to fix your color corrections, your curve adjustment layer, which we do not have in Photoshop Elements. But basically, these two numbers are close. Your Y is higher than your M. And this, you times this one by 3 to get it close to these. So there you go. Just think opposites. It'll work. It works. Fix that skin color. Get the red out. Isn't there a commercial that says get the red out for a fabric detergent? Get the red out. Or the yellow. Let's not make ourselves jaundice. Let's not make ourselves sunburnt. Those are the two main problems. Have fun. Show me some before and after photos.